Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're going to be doing another day in our Watercolor Journal books. I'm using a 6x9 Bao Hong watercolor sketchbook. It has 100% cotton paper, 140-pound cold press. I'm using my Core mini palette today. It has 12 colors in it. QOR by Golden. I love this mini palette since I got it a couple of months ago. I have an enameled butcher tray. This is just where I do a lot of mixing of my colors. You can see I leave them on there from every time I paint, clean them off when I need to, but these will all reactivate very nicely if I need to use any of those colors. Some water, paper towel, and a selection of round brushes. I have a 10, a 4, and a size 8. The red ones are Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. This black one is a Silver Black Velvet brush. And then I have a rigger or a liner. This is a 2/0 size, a script liner brush. I don't know that I'll use the script liner today, but I'm also going to be doing line and wash today, or ink and wash. So I'm going to be using a pen to draw out my composition and create some texture for the image, and then I'm going to be adding in wash or the watercolor. I did this a couple videos ago with a whimsical little house. I've done it in a bunch of videos before, but I'm really excited to kind of dive into this a little bit more. I don't know, I'm just excited about ink and wash right now. So you might see a couple of pages of this. So hopefully you enjoy that. If not, there's lots of other videos to choose from that don't use ink, but just use watercolor. All right, so let's get started. I went on a great hike the other day. So I'm going to put the reference image up here that I'm going to be using. Just this beautiful kind of landscape with a big fun tree at the crook of a little path that you can see here. So what I want to do while I'm doing this is, one, I'm going to be actually painting it horizontally. But this image is obviously vertical. So I'm going to have to make some of this up in my imagination because I'm going to expand it this way. I could just tape down the center and have a more vertical section, but I'm going to use this whole piece here. And I'm also going to want to simplify. So there's lots of detail, lots of little shadows and brush or different colors. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. And yeah, we're going to get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with my path down here. So the path kind of comes up and snakes around here. So I'm just going to, and again, some of this is going to be slightly modified. This is more of an inspiration photo. And then we're going to come from this section. So really wide at the bottom. It's going to come here and then it's going to peter off into the distance out this way. Now, what I do want to emphasize is we're going to have lots of color right here of these wildflowers. This is a beautiful kind of like wildflower garden. I'm not going to do a lot of ink there, but I'm going to focus on my tree. So this big tree. And there's a lot of detail in here, but I'm just going to kind of just draw out the essence of the tree. This general shape, it's going to go off the page because again, I'm working horizontally. The little cropping is going to take place. There's all these bushes over here. And I'm really just looking at the picture and kind of letting my hand wander around the shapes in the areas. Doing a lot of like sketching. I'm going to just draw in some sections or separations. And I'm going to bring the trunk down a little bit. And then there's going to be I think I'm going to add an imaginary fence back here. Along the way. And then over on this side, there's also going to be some grass. This is going to be grass here, and then some shrubs. And I'm really looking at just the shapes of like the overall general shapes of things. So there's some green grass in here that's like roughly in this shape. And then these shrubs that kind of come around down towards the bottom. And then this other set of trees over here. And it creates this space here will be kind of empty. Or the light wash of the background. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that, I think. All right, I am going to put in a little bit of a line for the mountain in the background, like way in the background. Not exactly the same shape that is there. Kind of some sloping hill here. All right, I think I'm going to do a little bit of just texture on the edge. This doesn't really have much in the image, but I'm going to add some. And then all of this is, let's just draw like I said, I don't do this very often. This isn't like the thing I gravitate towards, but I think I'm going to start. And there's even more. All right, that feels good. I feel like I can see the composition. I see where I'm going with everything. And now I'm going to start to add some wash. I'm going to start with kind of my lighter areas. I'm going to put down a gray here and then a light I'm going to do with the sky and a really light kind of wash of green in the background. I want this to kind of fade into the background. In the image, everything is kind of the same value and you lose the tree a little bit in the mountain. I'm going to try to bring that out. And that's the beauty of painting. Like I can change what reality looks like based on my preferences. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I think I'm going to keep the background kind of a very light green yellow. So let's see, I have a bismuth yellow and I have a sap green here. I'm going to add a little yellow to my green. And I'm going to add a lot of water. So I just reactivated some sap green that I already had here. And I'm just adding a little more yellow. All right, so I'm going to rinse my brush off so I can start fresh. I'm going to pick up. So when I rinsed my brush off, I didn't dab it off. I left all the water in it. And I'm adding it and picking up color at the same time. And I am just going to go through here and put on a light wash. I'm going to worry too much of, getting it in the trees because they're going to be much darker. I want them to kind of pop from the background. And I don't want this to be perfectly flat. So I'm probably going to come back to it a couple times. Just drop in some darker color. Pick up a little bit darker sap green. There we go. So while that dries, I'm going to focus on gray. So we have gray of the gravel, which is very neutral gray, and then we have this bluish gray of the sky. I'm going to start with Payne's gray, which I already have over here. I'm going to see if I can get my sap green not to infiltrate it. Just going to wipe off that corner there. Oh my goodness. Hold, please. Resituate. So I'm just going to reactivate this gray. And this is just Payne's gray right from the palette. Mix it up, add some water. And we're just going to leave some white spots in it. And we will come back a little bit later to add some darker shadows. So I just picked up more water. You don't always have to pick up more paint. I'm just picking up more water and kind of using what's here. And I also have some brown here. I always forget the name of the brown, the other brown that I have in this palette. And I don't have my glasses on for reading. It's the transparent brown oxide. So I have a transparent brown oxide and a burnt umber. So the burnt umber is the redder brown. I'll just show you. So this is the burnt umber. No, that's the brown oxide, and this is the burnt umber. So you can see one's very red, one is not so red. I'm going to take some of this. Let's add a little yellow to it. Get this wheat-like color. A little bit of purple. So the purple neutralizes our yellow a little. If it's too yellow, just throw in some purple. So you can see I haven't really picked up from my palette. I'm just using what's on my palette here. And if you learn color mixing, which I have a couple of color mixing videos, a lot of times what's sitting in front of you, even if you don't have the colors that you want, a little bit of this in here, you can make them if you know how to mix your colors and the properties of your primaries and secondaries. So I really encourage that as well. Maybe I'll do another color mixing video soon. All right, and now I'm going to keep building. I'm going to go in with sap green with a little phthalo blue in it to make a cooler green. I'm just going to pop that in right here. Along the roadway. So it's like grass, kind of dead grass. You know, I'm going to go right in this area here, this crook between all of this high foliage, not foliage, flowers, wildflowers. Just kind of making a little meadowy area. We're going to paint over it quite a bit, but. And then there's some of this green up here in this patch. And this is really kind of blocking out all of our areas and all of our colors, and things will start to come together. But then the magic really happens when you go back and you add on like another layer or two and more fine details. Kind of brings everything together. So I want this to be a little more yellow. I'm going to pick up some nickel azo yellow, which is a slightly warmer yellow, added to this already kind of brown wheat color. And I'm going to bring that up here. Kind of sloping down. And then this green over here at the base of the mountain. All right, so I think this is dry enough. I can go back up to my sky. So like I said before, we had like a bluer gray sky. So I'm going to add some phthalo blue. Actually, I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to my Payne's gray. So we have this dusty blue color, or dusty gray blue color. And I am just going to add got a nice stormy sky. I'm not going to think too hard about it. Just some light and dark areas. I just rinsed my brush off and it's just water. Kind of making what the first blue I put on there, blue-gray, work for me. And you can always go back in and drop in a few more darker areas, let it dry a little bit, and then drop in a few more areas. Okay, so we have the majority of things blocked in except for this area and the trees and our grassy area over here. So this is going to be a lot of sap green. Well, this is going to have lots of color in it. We'll get to that. But this is just going to be lots of sap greens. I'm actually going to lighten this up a little for layer 1. And I am just going to use kind of vertical strokes here. And I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. I'm going to use my larger brush to mix up some darker. I'm going to take sap green and a little Payne's gray to make a really dark olive color. And some vertical strokes. And I'm seeing even a little bit of reds and pinks in there and browns. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a little magenta. Now, magenta and green make a lovely brown. So as long as you let them mix together a little, they kind of neutralize each other a bit. And the magenta isn't too strong, but definitely gives a much more natural kind of woody feel. So there we go. I'm happy with that. This area over here, more sap green, more Payne's gray. Let's just build this out a little. So some things you can do are using all sides of your brush, the tip of your brush to make fine lines, the side of your brush without a lot of paint in it to dry brush and make texture. So don't be afraid to use your brush in all directions. So I don't have a lot of paint on here. I'm using a lot of dry brushing. I'm going horizontally and then again vertically, stippling in, using like a pouncing technique. And there are some other brushes that have kind of textured bristles that can aid in this, but they're not necessary. There we go. I'm actually going to bring this down this way a little bit. I want it to curve down. So I'm going to widen this. I'm going to let that dry, and then I can always go back and add a little bit more detail and texture. So let's do this area in here. I'm going to switch back, and this is lots of yellow and lots of pinks in these wildflowers. So what I'm going to do is first I'm just going to go in with these pinks and these yellows. My clip is getting in the way. And then I'm going to paint all around them. So pinks. These might mix a little to make a few oranges. That's fine. At least for me. I'm not worried about it. And now I'm going to come back in. This all down here, I want it to be this cooler green color. So phthalo blue. But we gotta lighten it up with some water here. Use my bigger brush. And we're definitely letting some of it bleed into the pinks. We're going to put some more details on, but that definitely gives that roadside feel. All right, I'm going to pick up a little more yellow. I'm going to kind of keep going up into this area. The color is going to change a little bit because I'm putting it over top of green. And I'm going to even add a little more magenta, but it's already mixed with the green, so it's looking a little more red. But I'm okay with that. And I'm just trying to create texture and... All right, so this area right here, this is going to be kind of what we see through the trees. It's going to be a lighter, I'm going to start with a yellow. I'm going to add a little green to it. Because it kind of has to blend with what's on either side. But when I go back in, I just have to make sure these trees are much darker than this little opening area. Otherwise, they are going to blend together. So we're going to let that dry. We're going to let this dry over here. We're going to go give some of the other areas that are dry another layer of attention, another layer of detail. So my gravel road, I'm going to go back in actually with a little bit of Payne's Gray over here. So I put a little Payne's Gray on my brush, but not a lot. And I'm going to go over it with, so this is like a dry brush technique. You can see kind of gives it that gravel texture. And I'm just running it back and forth. You can hear the texture of the paper. Add that in there. And then I'm going to come back to one of these brown yellow colors over here. And I'm going to add some of that in another layer to the edge of the road. And again, I'm using my smaller brush. This is a size 4 now, and I'm going to add some darker texture layer here on the side. You can see my ink under here. I'm kind of following that same pattern with my wash, my watercolor, this swooping up feel into these edges. All right, so let's tackle this tree now. All right, so the tree in front is eventually going to be the darkest. So this is sap green with Payne's Gray. And for my first layer, I am going to add quite a bit of water. And I am just going to go through and like dot my way, stipple my way around. There's a lot of growth on the branch itself, and then there's this growth down here. And then I'm going to go in with more sap green, more Payne's Gray, not a lot of watering down. Get into these little crevices, white spots that I left. All right, and let's go in the background here. And putting in this really dark color using wet on wet. In here, I am going to, even though you don't really see it too much, I am going to add some of this brown color, but with Payne's Gray mixed in. You can make your own browns too, but very dark Payne's Gray brown. I'm going to use the tip of my brush. Now I'm going to let this dry, and I'm actually going to add some more ink on top of all of this. So I'm happy so far with the color. We're going to let it dry. You know what? I'm going to add in just a few little slightly darker bits back here for some interest and some texture. And then let everything dry, and we're going to add some more ink to create a little more texture. All right, everything's dry. So where I want to add some more ink, I like my fence here, but I'm going to add a little bit more detail to it so it's a little more substantial. So just kind of scratching my way through. I'm going to add more texture to the flowers here. So I'm going to use just a scribble technique to kind of create more sense of actual individual flowers and some people will love this and some people will absolutely hate this. It'll feel messy, and to me it can feel energetic and lively and a little funky. Using very light pressure now to do this back section here. And just layers and layers of this. Go around some of these. Create some more branches just with the ink. Go back in the clumps and clusters. The tree. Same thing over here. Let's add in some more texture of, so it gives a feel of more individual pieces rather than one big clump. And really giving everything in the foreground more detail and treatment with the ink. Leave everything in the background kind of as it is. This, I'm gonna and after, I'm actually going to go put in a few more spots of darker color here. So let's go back to our magenta with a small brush. Not quite that magenta. Let's add a little water. So in this layer, just adding a darker color so that there's variation in the value, These flowers aren't just a flat blob. They have light and shadow. There's overlap. Even go back here. And again, just adding to the overall energy. Same with the yellow. Maybe go a little bit browner yellow. Just picking up a little variation in color from the palette, whatever's kind of laying next to it. And I do want to add in a little bit more green kind of between some of these flowers. Well, now that's bugging me. It's a little too dark. A little too solid. So just going back in and adding some final shadows and details of a little bit more color in one place or another, if you feel like you need it. But you don't have to. All right, I'm done. I think I'm going to let this one rest. This was a lot of fun to do. I enjoyed it. I don't know how successful I was at like really using the power of ink and wash, but I'm going to keep trying at this and looking at other artists and examples of how to do this. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out the description for links to all the supplies and materials that I use to learn more about them. You can also leave a comment and share with a friend who you think might also like this watercolor journal journey. So we're going to tackle, I think, another ink and wash, but something more illustrative for our next video. So hopefully you'll be back to enjoy that.